When two worlds meet, they both made me feel very strange. They were shocked and cold to the core. Two can still see pictures of earthquakes and huge waves that hold towns. And the time when there were people in front of the draw dot boards, still as if they were already knew that not all of them would be allowed to get on. I thought I was just watching a typical disaster movie. I keep going back to when worlds, though, collide, the more I understand that what makes it scary doesn't lie completely on the screen. It has to do with what people not enough time to notice. The present-day Noah's Ark was made of steel and the fear of the atomic age. Planets that melt, those were really nothing more than as lamps heat the wax. Pictures of an act of confusion that looked like it was. These are real emotions because the sets were shaking so hard that they could only hold on to each other. To keep standing up. And now here are 20 weird things you might not have known when worlds cross. 195120. The Ark of Noah. Today, there is a very short part in When Worlds Collide, which has always been a scary thought me. It's when the ship doesn't move. On the launch platform, huge and heavy, and not at all interested. I thought at the time that this was a vessel of to be saved. When I watched it again after years, I saw that it looks more like a sentence, more of a rescue. Before the first picture shows up, the film does that okay. It starts with a quote from Genesis 7, not to beg God, but to remind theft people that there was a time when people were killed for believing it. Too much information. There is a very cold warning. I in the whole movie. Never did George Powell saw When Two Worlds Meet as pure science stories. It was the story in his mind. Of Noah's Ark told again after 100 years had only just come out of Hiroshima. Palace Noah doesn't hear God's words. Hidata is heard. His ark isn't made off wood and trust, but from steel equations and the fear of a whole society being aware that it can erase itself. The parallels are meant to be there. Earth is doomed. A small group is picked. The rest are left behind, not because there isn't enough, not because of sin room. And the rocket launch is planned. Like the Great Flood turned around. The sea goes up below, fire explodes above, and people leave the world they have already being destroyed. When two worlds meet, don't ask how. Do we make it? It's a big ask. More painful if we bring about the end of the world ourselves. Who has the right to get on the ship? 19. Not liked by reviewers, saved by history. The first time I read reviews of I really felt When Worlds Collide shocked. The New York Times said that the film was cold and lacked personal warmth. Some people didn't like the idea of Earth's destruction as impossible, almost not logical. It looked like a bad day to them, just a thought, nothing serious. Movies. Taken into account, though, in 1951, that response turns SADIT makes sense. Everything had just seen atomic bombs in action. Fear in life and real life was already too much. People didn't want to be told that everything might be over. Their wish was to forget. As well as science fiction, the people still thought of time as the domain of in pulp literature. Every bad thing happens. Could be easily fixed with a heroic line of speech. What was wrong was that When Worlds Meet didn't solve anything. The movie does note a moral escape. There's only a race against time of the clock, and the fights as time runs out. Find out. That could be why it was turned down. It wasn't wrong, but since it came too early. Decades after that, when disaster movies became a people went back to serious genres. When two worlds meet and understand that the start of almost every conference was here, cities being hit by tsunamis, conference rooms full of scientists who don't agree, decisions about life and death are made in secret. 18. Running out of time to film. It's a terrible irony to think that about When Two Worlds Meet. A movie about it was made near the end of the world. Conditions that are terrible. Important almost gave George Powell a ridiculously low budget of less than 4 weeks to film the whole live-action movie apart. On set, time went by as quickly as the clock in the script that counts down. They worked 12 hours a day with almost not a break. Sets were put together and taken apart. All the time. Each shot had to be important. Because there was no room for mistake. On some days, the shooting plan Earth almost fell apart at the same speed. Does in the movie. It's funny that when after 27 days of shooting, it was over, everyone let out a sigh of breath. Didn't know that the hardest part was still ahead. How things turned out in Worlds Collide wasn't something that could be rushed. As the players walked away, the effects team went on set months off very careful work with models, matte paintings, skies drawn by hand, fire, there was smoke and water. It had to bed one by hand. One small mistake could take out a whole model. One fix worked for another week. That's what makes When Worlds Collide so unique. It does more than just tell a story about people leaving the end of the world. It was made by people who were actually running in a race against time to keep the movie, making it not fall apart before it was over, telling the story of the world's fall apart. 17. A warship from the start. Do you remember the first time you saw the ship and come together, worlds? It doesn't look sweet like old school science fiction. It's heavy, rough, and cold. That wasn't a mistake, the IT was done on purpose. George Pal wasn't get ideas for this vessel from Escape from comic books or the space age dreams. He thought about World War II Moretto be exact, the Nazi 51 flying bomb. A tool made not to defeat, but to scare regular people. The drawing group looked at every detail. The rough metal body, the fierce flames from the exhaust, even how the rocket shuts off as it comes to life. It was all put together into how the Ark ship was made. As a result, it's an automobile that doesn't seem to be something that was supposed to help people, but something people would make in a panic. It works, is quick, and is dangerous. That makes for a very uncomfortable paradox. Noah's Ark of the 20th century is born. They come from the same family as tools of mass loss and damage. It doesn't get rid of war. The war wounds are still there. Out into space. Point 16. The planet that is melting in the small world. These people all remember the same thing. People who watch when worlds collide. The Earth in the movie is suffering, not blowing up in a beautiful fire, but it was melting slowly as if the Earth were on fire from the inside. Before CGI, the end of the world was shown in Worlds Collide was made with wax and heat. In pure risk. The team that made effects huge wax figures of Earth and the getting close to planet Zare. They put the types that work with heat lamps and heat sources and then filmed the melting process very quickly. When played back slowly moving, the wax shrank and cracked. Flowed down and looked eerily like a world in space that is dying. The whole scene was filmed on a seal. It was completely dark on the soundstage using colored paints to light up smoke, and matte paintings were put on top of each other. To make it feel like cosmic fire and chaos. Every lightning strike you see a data file. A layer that was made by handlight was used one pass at a time. It's not like Earth dies in an instant. IT slowly pours away and can't be put back, and maybe that's why the end of the world in When Worlds Collide still has more scary than many current movies. It doesn't get us excited. It leaves usual to do anything. Point 15. Cast of unknown people. Do you remember the name of any actors when you saw When Worlds first squash? I don't. What I remember instead, it's the way people feel on the screen were just faces trying to don't worry, the world is about to end. It looks like they meant for that to happen. When the movie started making, George Pal made a risky choice. Stars scared him. In general, in a time when Hollywood relied on this was based a lot on movie names, almost thoughts of suicide. Pal did understand one thing, though. If when people saw movie stars, they would think about jobs and fame. He wished for them to see who they are. Richard Durr, who played the main part scientist, and was almost a Broadway actor film audiences don't know about, when she was cast as Joyce, Barbara Rush had only several small parts. Not one of them radiated any sense of fame, and that made the movie a lot more quite scary. When the world falls apart, there aren't any Hollywood stars. See, normal people who are trying to understand what's going on. Scientists messing up figuring things out. Family members looking at all, and the lottery board saw their names not going to be called. There is no known face to hold on to. It was a risk, and buddy. The privacy of that makes When Worlds I feel like collide is more like a news story. More like something from the future than a fun and games. The crowd does not admire the characters, they take their place. Point 14. You can shake sets and see real reactions. If there are times when worlds get into a fight where the actors seem to losing their balance, falling, and holding on, screaming that they can't move things, it's in your nature to stay upright. To get people to feel the Earth. George Pal didn't tear itself apart, make the motion look real. He prepared the ground move around. A lot of big sets, like the rocket base and the city's interior, were built on huge platforms that could move around. When there were earthquake scenes, the crew used poles and pulleys for industry to shake the whole building very hard. What's scary is that many times the actors weren't told ahead of time. I can see them taking chairs and tables, getting dizzy and shouting over the noise. Those responses weren't planned. Pal, he wanted to be real, and he was ready to do it. Make up for it with stress on set. And that could be why these scenes still make people feel uneasy today. Not since even though they're loud, we know them the truth. We would know if the ground really shook. Would act in the exact same way. Point 13. A quiet ending and a loud one. Question. There's something very odd about the end of the book When Worlds Collide. It doesn't feel like the end at all. As soon as the survivors land on Earth, the first thing that fills them up is nothing. After that, a title card shows up. The starting. When everything is over, fire, lack of life, the movie doesn't say that people have been saved. It only says that things are starting over. Nothing in the very last scene suggests that people have learned their lesson. There is just a new world with the same people having all the memories of a dead person Earth. This is especially scary when seen in the light of 1951, when people were still living under the shadow of the bomb. The thought of it wasn't a positive dream to start over, the question was very real. If the world ended, what would the survivors build next? And maybe that's why the book When Worlds Collide ended the way it did it still rings today. Not because it gives hope, but not because it's sure we deserve it. Point 12. She was cast just 3 days ago. Before the shoot, I have always remembered the picture of Joyce Hendren in the movie When Worlds Collide. It makes her feel like a weak anchor. The one what is keeping the show from falling over. I am completely hopeless. What's tough to I think Rush almost wasn't there. Anyhow. Joyce Hendren played the part if given to 6 women. All of them turned it down. Due to the shooting schedule coming up and no female star, Paramount got scared. They needed a face that could still make people believe it was there, even if it was only for a moment. Then someone brought up Barbara Rush. She was 23 years old, not well known. However, she went into the reading room. It only took Pal 10 minutes to figure this out. It was her. Rush didn't play Joyce as a princess in trouble or a scientist's daughter. She played her as a woman. Being careful to keep the last bits off as the world around her fell apart separate. She agreed to play the part on a Friday. She was in front of the picture. And that sense of urgency just what Pal needed. Joyce doesn't looks like someone was getting ready for the end of the world. She seems to be someone thrown right into it. Point 11. The scene of the wave that almost drowned the crew. If there is one thing that makes if you want to feel like a real end of the world, many people would pick a wave. George Pal did not want a wave of movies. What did he want that felt like a real disaster was about to happen, destroying, and still destroying? In order to do this, the team built annual tiny New York City on stage 12. Few tall buildings, bridges, and streets, cars, and everything was set up for one shot. It was an easy plan. Let 10,000 gallons of water out of and put the model in the overhead tank and let it crush it. City in one take. Get the cameras ready, doors are closed and checked. After that, someone asked the question that no one else had thought about. Where does the water go afterward? It was too late by that time. The flood hit. It got rid of the ideal model. There was water on the platform, soaked the floor of the soundstage, electrical wires that were wet. Lights cut off the flow. Crew members were spread out. As the water got up to their knees. Someone yelled to turn off the power before what would happen hit. After it was over, they had a beautiful shot in a soundstage that is a mess. Point 10. The picture of planet Zyra was on glass. The last few minutes of When Worlds Collide feel like a dream all the time. Earth seems calm, pale, violet, and strange, but not dangerous. It looks like a matte picture, which it is. However, in a very pure form. Shell, as the famous space artist Bonistel, didn't use multiple layers to paint Zur makes up. He painted the whole new world on an 8-foot wide piece of glass 6 feet wide and 6 feet tall. 3 weeks for every a brush stroke. Each color was mixed with Technicolor is an exact match. While shooting, the glass was put right on top of taking a picture with the actors being a long way behind it. Everything depending on the point of view. If a person was even 6 inches out of place, the illusion would fall apart completely. When the Barbara Rush walked down as the camera rolled up the slope, got inside the frame, and it stopped right where it should have. Point 1 picture, 1 actor, and the preciseness made movie magic in its the most basic form. Point 9. Larry Keating passed out during the last scene. When Worlds Collide is Dr. Cole Hendren's first book. The person who stands straight all the time. Hayes, the ARC project's main idea, to keep everything from falling in mind. They will split up before the world does. But during the last week of filming, that the straight figure started to wobble in real life. At the time, Larry Keating was 54 years old. An actress who was more used to theater lights than a movie set in chaos. Though the shooting plan was very tough. 14-hour days, frequent stops because of effects problems with repeated takes that wore not much strength was left. After that came the last scene. The instant Hendren sees the ARC took off without him. Getting spoke his piece, hit his mark, and after that, his knees gave way. He fell down. In the middle. The whole set rushed in. Someone asked for a doctor. It was Keating. I was unconscious for almost 2 minutes. They put him in a chair and gave him water. I tried again after 20 minutes, once more. Keating made it this time. Through. Hendren's eyes showed that he was tired. In the last picture isn't acting. It's a man who has everything in on. He has nothing left to hold on to on the screen. To 8. The scene with the draw was changed. The night before the movie, where the draw takes place and when worlds collide was supposed to be the movie's main idea. 40 names are called. Still a lot of people behind. But in the first draft, it didn't feel that way. Rudolph, the director, made Reddit and told Powell, straight out, if the crowd doesn't feel the weight of being left behind, the disaster that follows makes no sense. That is, the night before the shoot, author Sidney Bao was sitting in his hotel room and wrote the whole scene over in 4 hours. He also said riots, besides crying out. He added the time when the crowd knows it's not a lucky day, it's the death penalty. There were pages sent to the set. Artists got brand new copy pages with their coffee in the morning. As well as when the strange thing happened as it rolled. A lot of crowd scenes. Poor players who were paid $15 a day didn't need to do something. They knew what the sense of being left behind. The Chowson screen wasn't planned out. It got hired because they really needed help. Mate, it kept rolling because he knew there are times when things can never happen again. Be made again. 7. There's no one scary time. The wave, but there was no sound. In the first cut, Earth's last moments are shown. Filled with noise and screams, many people, alarms, and explosions. George Pal thought that's what people is expected. The end of the world had to be loud. Lee Stevens, a composer, didn't agree. Put forward that the scariest thing isn't sound, but the time when all the sound goes away. When people stop living, not fighting, and accepting the end. Pal was not sure. Stevens made 2 recordings types, one with a full chorus rising to a peak and one almost empty, only wind, thunder in the distance, and a faint piano sound that goes away. Both of them test screened. The loud version got cheers. What the quiet version made the crowd freeze. Some people cried. Pal picked the one with no sound. Right away. When the movie came out, that was the scene that people remembered most. The emptiness sounds like collective giving up. The sound of a letting go of the world. 6. A book that was sitting on the studio put away for 15 years, it wasn't forgotten when Worlds Collide happened. Was stuck. John Ballmer and Philip with book was written in 1933 and Paramount bought the rights right away after being sure it was going to be the next big mess. Epic. But for more than 10 years, the idea was only on paper. In 1934, plans for production were made public. Once more in 1936 and then again in 1940, it stopped at the same place every time. The trouble was that no one knew how to persuade record the end of the world on film with how things were back then. Leaders showed Yupan left. Screenwriters came up with Angave up on drafts. The story got its image as a cursed end of the world project. It wasn't until 1950 that the world had to deal with the truth of the nuclear fear that science fiction made real important. That was shown by George Powell. Not possible was really a matter of money and makeup. Paramount cleaned up the book and gave it to Sidney Bao. He told them, make it work. It took 17 years. Going from page to screen, but when the world was finally ready for it. To listen to that story. 5. $936,000. Least expensive and most expensive one. 2 minutes. It was well known that George Pal could use $1 more wisely. But when Worlds Collide made him do everything he could, the money wasn't spent on players or big sets. It turned into a mess. $200,000 for miniatures. Matte paints. $480,000. The flood process was almost fatal on its OWN.to the group. It cost $95,000 in a day. Paramount got scared and asked Pal refused to make any cuts that were possible. He reused things to save money everywhere else. Setting up, shooting in one take, and cutting scenes outside. But the 12 minutes of the damage stayed. When the movie made $3.5 million, and no one more asked why it cost a lot for those 12 minutes. 4. John Hoy played the bad guy without being sure of his fate. In the movie, Sidney Stanton is the most horrible person. Like a capitalist, Hoy's able to buy his way onto the safety list. Some people are left behind. John Hoy played badly and altogether not knowing. The movie was shot in order. Today, Hoy only got the pages containing his speech. No one ever gave him the whole script. He asked George Pal asked, does Stanton live? Does he? Make him right? Pal just smiled and told her, you'll find so Hoy. Go see the movie. Played a man fighting in every scene. He never knew if he would make it or not to get it. Stanton was seen by Hoy at the opening, first time seeing someone die on screen. He after 8 days of performing a person who did not make it to the end. 3. The rocket went off at 2:00 morning. It had to be dark and smoky for the arc launch. Fire and a lot of noise to wake up a whole neighborhood. The permit to film ran out only until midnight. The party started at 11 p.m., assuming an hour would be enough. The first try didn't work because the machine that makes smoke. The second didn't work because of the wind. By 2 a.m. they were on take 7 and not at all with Aok, then. That's when Pal chose to leave. Alan. Full smoke and all the lights on, there are flames 40 feet high. The launch it took off perfectly. People across the street called the fire department thought Paramount Wason fire. There were 3 fire trucks there. Before someone told them it was just Amovai. Pal got a $500 fine and had to am sorry to bother the neighbors, but the shot was great. Point 2 were kicked out because they were too hopeless. This game was not allowed to be played in Spain, Portugal and Ireland, not to fight unless God wasn't there. All 3 the same reason was given by control boards. The movie doesn't have any divine helping out. Just cold math and numbers decide who lives and who dies. For places with strong Catholic faith in the time after World War II, that was not acceptable. The movie was called Anti-Hero Support for Existential Dread. Portugal thought it was bad for morals, Ireland just stamped it as rejected. For years, there were bans. But by 1962, the movie was shown again, and the things had changed, and that fear was gone. Thought to be dangerous. Point 1, the follow-up that never happened. George Pal had always intended to make When Two Afterworlds Meet, a story about people starting over on a new world, splits over faith, power, and living with 2 kids. Ideas for art there was. There was a story written. Important at first, they agreed. Then the battle for space 1955 did not work. It was the business that left. The project was called off. The story was put away and then lost during an office cleanup after the game Worlds Collide became one of Hollywood's most well-known lost titles. It was never supposed to happen. That might be a good fit because when the main point of Worlds Collide was never really that it was about the present before we know if we deserve one or not. In the end, the pictures of melting fade. The waves made of wax planets are higher than cities. A ship leaving Earth in the dark. When where worlds meet, not everything is left behind. But an empty spot that's tough to describe. It doesn't try to scare you with an explosion. You were scared by the thought that the end of the world doesn't need monsters. It just needs people to mess up enough, make choices. For you, it's When Worlds Meet. A story of hope or a warning, but we still won't pay attention to. If you like movies with stories that's not just about movies but also about they behind them, like this video, sign up for the channel so you don't miss the lost Hollywood passings on.